Hi, I'm Glenn Rogers, and this is American Perspectives. In this video, we're going to be talking about, at least in part, ancient economics. Now, what we're really going to be talking about is capitalistic free enterprise, but it is the oldest economic system in the world. And so I'm going to start by giving you a little bit of a history lesson about economics and how it used to work and how things started out once people got to living together in organized villages, organized societies. Originally, when they needed something that they didn't have, they would use a barter system. They would trade back and forth. A guy who had some extra fish might trade it to the guy who had some extra grain, and that way the guy with the grain has some fish to eat, and the guy that had the fish gets some grain to make bread with, and that sort of thing. And so it was a barter system. But people figured out pretty quickly that this is kind of cumbersome and awkward, and it doesn't always work well. And so before too long, they came up with what we refer today as some medium of exchange. Now, we just call it money, okay? They didn't have the kind of printed money that we had, but eventually they began using things like little minted coins or silver coins or of different sizes to denote different values. And so they began selling things. So I kind of want to start there. It's still very early society. It's still what we could call prehistoric. It was pretty basic and what we would consider kind of primitive. But people were living together, and they had something of a market where people could go and sell things. Now, let's assume there's a guy there named Ahmad who owns some goats. He's got a little herd of goats, and that's something that he does. And his wife is Amira, and it turns out that she's good at making goat cheese because her mother used to make goat cheese, and she taught her daughter Amira how to make goat cheese, and she makes really good goat cheese. And so Amira makes the goat cheese, and she takes it to the market, and she sells it. Now, when her mother did it, of course, they were using the barter system, but now that they have a medium of exchange, they're using the money, let's call it money. And so as Amira sells her goat cheese, she's making money. Okay, the goats belong to her husband, and she had access to the milk. She's probably the one milking the goats. And so she makes the cheese, and now she sells the cheese, and she's making a profit. She's making money. And so as she makes money, let's say on this particular day before she goes home from the market, she goes over to the person who sells grain, and she buys some grain so she can grind it into flour, and then she can make bread. Or maybe one of her kids needs some new sandals, and she goes to the leather worker who makes nice leather sandals, and she buys some leather sandals with the profit that she's made from selling her goat cheese. And she still has money left over, so she saves some of that. And after a little bit of time, after she buys the other stuff she needs, she has enough money to where she can actually buy a couple more goats. And so she buys some goats and adds those to the herd that her husband already has. And now she has more milk, and she's making more cheese, and she's selling more cheese, and she's making more money. And so she buys some more goats. And the interesting thing is, everybody's doing this sort of thing. Now, what kind of an economy am I describing here? What picture does this bring to mind? Well, basically, what I'm describing is a system of free enterprise. She owned the goats, she owned the milk, she made the cheese, so she owned that, and she went and she sold it, and she made some money, and she used that money to buy the things she needed, and she also used it to expand her business so she'd make even more money. What is that? What's that system called? Well, you can call it free enterprise, but you could also call it capitalism. Now, there are some scholars who would disagree with me. They would say, no. There wasn't any capitalism in the ancient world. Capitalism is developed much later on. And I disagree with them. And I've done a lot of research into ancient societies in the ancient Middle East, where you have the cradle of civilization. And there are a number of ancient documents that describe simply a system of free enterprise. It's what they had. Now, to be sure, religion had developed, and there was, a priesthood, and there were temples, and the people gave a percentage of their possessions to the temple. That's always the way it's worked with religion. And some people try to tell you that, in fact, it was so pervasive that the temple ran the economy, and so it wasn't a free market and it wasn't capitalism. Well, the evidence of ancient documents just doesn't support that. Okay, that's just simply wrong. It isn't true. In the ancient world, there was free enterprise, and there was, in fact, what today we would call capitalism. And it wasn't something that only existed in the very ancient world. You can actually follow it from time frame to time frame throughout history, beginning in the prehistoric world and coming up into the time of world empires like Assyria and Babylon and the Persians and the Greeks and the Romans and all of those ancient empires. You can find that there was free enterprise going on there, and there's all kinds of historical documents that show that this is true. Okay, so the economy in the ancient world, at least in the western part of the ancient world, where we would trace back much of our history from the cradle of civilization in the Middle East, and then developing into what we would call the Western world, there was free enterprise, capitalism. And after the fall of Rome, when Western society pretty much fell into disarray, even then, for a while, there was free enterprise. And eventually, what you know, if you know your history, is that in Europe, feudalism developed, and that curtailed, to some degree, free enterprise for an awful lot of people. Yet, at the same time, those who had the means were still engaging, generally speaking, in what we might call a kind of free enterprise. That didn't last very long, given the fact that we're talking about 10,000 years. We're talking about a little time frame of a few hundred years there. And as the Renaissance began, free market capitalism came roaring back. And people had the freedom and they had the means to engage in a free market kind of an economy. And that's what's been happening in the West ever since, until, again, a short period of time in some places, socialism came into being. But socialism is not what existed as an economic system in the ancient world. It was capitalism. It was a free market economy. Now, a lot of people don't like capitalism because they think it's synonymous with greed, and they've been taught that it's a bad thing, and we shouldn't have capitalism because it's greed. It's just a form of greed. Well, that's, again, not true. That's one of those things that it is simply untrue. Capitalism is simply an approach to economics. It has nothing to do with people who are greedy or cruel. Capitalism doesn't make people greedy or cruel. Now, there are some greedy and cruel people who have used capitalism to make a lot of money, and they've been ugly and mean and greedy and cruel, okay, as they were doing it. But that's their responsibility, and you can't blame capitalism for that. They were just crummy people. okay? They were lousy, crummy people, and they did ugly stuff. But that hasn't got anything to do with the socioeconomic structure that they were engaged in at the time. Can't blame capitalism because some people have used it badly. You know, that's no different than saying because somebody used a baseball bat to hit somebody with and hurt them, that the baseball bat is somehow a bad thing, you know, or a hammer or a gun or whatever. You don't fault something that isn't a thinking entity as if it was a thinking entity. Okay, capitalism is simply an economic system, and there are certain important ideas that are involved in it. Number one, capitalism says that people have the right to private property. You can own private property. And number two, that you have the right to profit from your labor. Number three, that you have control of your means of production and distribution. And number four, that you have a right to earn a profit from the work you do. And you have a right to earn as much as you can earn. There's no ceiling on it, okay? It's not that you can earn up to a certain amount and then that's all. You can earn as much as you are capable of earning. And I want to assure you that there's nothing wrong with that, and people have understood that and utilized that idea and that concept for at least 10,000 years, if not 12 or even more, okay? It's a very ancient idea, very ancient system. It's been around for a long time, almost as long as people have had an economic exchange of sorts, and free enterprise works. Capitalism allows smart, creative, inventive, hardworking people to excel and to achieve, okay? And if they're good people, then in the process of all of that and the excelling and the achieving and making money, then they do good things with their money. Are there still some greedy people around who are ugly and mean and greedy? Yeah, there are. And some of them are capitalists. But that doesn't make capitalism a bad thing. Capitalism provides the incentive for hard work and sacrifice, okay? People put in a lot of hours and a lot of time, and they work hard and they sacrifice, including risking their income, in an attempt to build a business, to make a living for their family and that sort of thing. Capitalism is a good thing. It is the engine for economic growth. Capitalism is one of the things that allowed America to become the most powerful nation in the world in the shortest period of time ever. Now, a lot of people haven't stopped to think about this. You look back at all of the great empires that have ever existed. See, and we kind of don't like to think about America as being a world empire, but it is, okay? America is a world empire. But if you look back, just, you know, the Persians, the Greeks, the Romans, and whatever other empires there have been, the British Empire, whatever, America started from nothing and became the most powerful nation in the world in a shorter period of time than any other nation. You know how they did that? One of the things that enabled them to do that was through the use of capitalism. Capitalism is a good thing. And I want to mention, too, that the people who say capitalism is bad, capitalism is greed, and all this sort of thing, one of the things they fail to understand is that since America became America because of capitalism, one of the things we do as America, as a nation, the government does, we give more money to other countries around the world in the form of official government-sanctioned foreign aid than any other nation in the world. Who is it that's sending out all the money to all these other countries so they have what they need and it's us. It's the United States of America, okay? And why is that possible? Because of capitalism. But beyond that, private citizens in America give more money to charity and to benevolent efforts of different kinds than any other group of people on the planet. Year after year after year after year, Americans give tens of billions of dollars every single year, over and above all the money that the government gives in foreign aid. How do we do that? Because citizens of capitalistic America are working for capitalistic countries or companies, and they're making money, and they're making enough money not only to take care of their own needs, but to be able to be charitable and give to help others. There isn't a socialistic country in the world that has ever done anything like that. Capitalism is a good thing. It is a very good thing. And one of the things that I want to tell you about is a little book that I've written. It's called A Brief History of Capitalistic Free Enterprise and Why It is Better Than Any Form of Socialism. Now, again, like with a former video I did on taxation and the problems with that, I've just sort of skimmed the surface here. I can't really go into much detail. I don't have the time. But in this book, I do. And I document all of the historical sources and talk about all of the things that happen on a continuum of history so that you can see that capitalism has always been around and that capitalism is far superior to any other economic system that anybody has proposed. And this might be something that you would find interesting. Again, it's available through Barnes & Noble or through Amazon, either as a paperback book or as an ebook. And so if you're interested in that, this book is available for you to read. So if you like what you heard today, click the thumbs up button down below. Maybe subscribe to our channel. That would be really helpful to us. And leave some comments in the comments section down below. We would appreciate it if you would do that. Thanks for watching today, and I hope you'll watch again. Have a nice day.